Alrighty, welcome everybody back on the On the Fly podcast. We have a super special guest. You guys have no idea how long I've been waiting to really have a deep conversation with this individual. There's so many complications too because some of our members have gotten sick. This individual's gotten sick. Like, there's some sort of force that did not want this podcast to happen. And I'm pretty sure it's because it's going to be that fire. 100%. I believe that's the reason. Nonetheless, I am your host today, Olayinka Famadou. We have Sean Lacey and Zachary Owen as our co-hosts. And for our guests, guys, you have not a clue. We have the amazing Todd Baldwin. Todd Baldwin, you see, I was just telling you off camera that the way you've inspired me being, a man of color yourself and being in this space and how real you are, like you're a man of substance. You're not Hollywood, as I mentioned earlier. Like the fact that you're even taking your time out of this day to really, connect with us and have this amazing conversation. We appreciate you. We thank you. But again, I know who you are. I know some stuff about you. But for our listeners as well as Zach and Sean, can you kind of tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what Todd Baldwin encompasses?
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me on, and I apologize it took so long to get here, but I'm stoked to be here. So thanks for having me on the show. Brief highlight of me. I sort of have the oldest story in the book. I grew up poor. I was raised by a single mother. And at a very young age, I was like, I do not want that for my life and my future. And so I'm going to do whatever it takes to hustle my way out of it. And so I got my first job when I was 12. I started my first business when I was 15. And then I did go to college. I ended up dropping out. I believe I was 22 when I dropped out. Not recommending anyone here drops out, by the way, but it did work out for me. By the time I was 25, I was a multimillionaire through real estate. And I'm 30 now. I just had a son 3 months ago. And so that is awesome. And the fact that I don't have to have like a boss or a 9 to 5, and I can just make, 7 figures a year and enjoy my time with my family is amazing. It's all I ever wanted. So it's definitely been a journey and a ride. And I'm so grateful that I'm here. It's funny, though, because all of the money in the world doesn't solve for internet problems like I'm having right now.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm recording this on a lopsided phone instead of my computer. So, it's not all gravy all the time, but it's definitely better than where I came from.
100%. Todd, it's funny you're saying all this because, like, again, when I really resonated with you, I'm like, there's so many things that I heard, obviously, from your CNBC Make It, to your YouTube channel, to your Instagram. Again, yes, I resonate with you because you're a man of color and just that connection is just different. But then your story, right? I love that. And I can't 100% say that I, have gone through everything you've gone through. Obviously, all stories are different, but there are pieces and bits of your story that, really resonate with me. And that's, why we, connected and I reached out to you because I'm like, you had so much influence on my life. But I guess kind of the first question that pops in my mind that I would love to kind of go towards, because I should give you some background with FLI, our community, our basis for our listeners are people who are a little bit older than us. So let's say 10 years and a little bit old or younger than us, like 10 years, right? So you got kind of like college and a little bit beyond as well as high school, a little bit below. So you mentioned in what your statement right there or your backstory is that, you were in school and maybe it wasn't for Todd, it wasn't for you. And, and the reason I'm asking this, because I remember in your story in CNBC Make It that, you were already making crazy amounts of money doing something else. So then maybe in your mind, you're like, well, I don't need to necessarily continue this, right? So maybe whether it's elaborating on that for the people who don't know that story and, or, what was, maybe you already had that entrepreneur mindset. Why? Because it's interesting. People they laugh when they say, oh, you dropped out of school, or even you laugh it up to kind of like, put it at ease. But if something else worked for you, I'm pretty sure you must be proud of it. But I'm curious for a lot of people out there, can you kind of talk about the misnomer of dropping out and what it could do for you if you really found a better opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned that, you have some people, some of your listeners who are a little bit younger, maybe in their senior year of high school, as well as older. And that's actually the reason why I sort of give that disclaimer. I don't recommend it, because I had a guy on Instagram. He was like 16 and he DM'd, he was like, I want to be just like you, Ted. I'm not going to college. And I was like, whoa. I don't want your parents death threats. Like, calm down. Right. Really think this through. So for me, I believe that if what you're going to do is start a business, it's my personal opinion, you don't need to go to college for that. Because whatever they teach you in business management school, you're not going to learn anything as much as you will just going out and starting a business. And I started a business when I was 15. I started a landscaping company. And at the time, I think in my state, minimum wage was $8.67 an hour. I'm up in the Seattle, Washington area. And I was able to make double the minimum wage when I was 15 because I started my own business. And so right then and there, I learned, oh, being your own boss is advantageous. And then I started, reading books about passive income and investing. And so by the time I got to college, I was taking a marketing class from a professor who's never marketed a business. They got a teaching degree and they taught marketing out of a textbook. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I learned more about marketing when I made a press release for my landscaping company or when I got on the phone and did cold calls selling insurance. So by the time I was, 22-ish, I think 22, I was making around 110 grand a year selling insurance. And I was like, I don't need to go back to school. Like, you go to school to get a good job. And then I was able to take all that money and start investing in real estate. So I think it depends on what you want to do. If you want to be a doctor or a lawyer, absolutely, you need school. If you want to be a poet or an entrepreneur or a professional wrestler, whatever it is, like you don't necessarily need to go to college, and you certainly don't need to spend 80 grand a year for a degree that might not give you any economic output. So I just think have a real conversation about what you want to do. And for anyone who turns their nose at people who maybe don't have a degree or do trades, I'll just say it. I know an electrician who didn't even go to college. He got an apprenticeship when he was 18, and the dude makes 160 grand a year. And he's laughing all the way to the bank at these people who graduate college and make 40K, right? So it's like it doesn't necessarily lead to financial freedom, I guess, if you go to school.
Right. And I'm sorry, Sean. Like, last question on this. This is so deep. There's so many layers to this, right? I'm curious because you made the statement, right? Unless you're learning something that usually would require like for you to actually know some stuff. Like you mentioned, a doctor, dentist, lawyer. Like you need to go to school for those. So I'm curious, like, what did you study initially, and then two, after you dropped out, what was how did your friends see you? How did your family see you? And then now to where you are with that same past, how do they see you? Did that success shut them up? I'm curious.
Yeah, so that's hilarious. So when I was first going to school, I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do. There was a potential path where I was going to be a professional boxer. So I was boxing in high school. I got really good, and my trainer didn't want me to go to college. He wanted me to stay and go pro boxing. But I had this moment of clarity where it's like, let's assume for a second I'm not the best in the world. Even if I was the best in the world, I might have brain damage and like a bunch of other stuff. So I was like, that might not be the path I want to go. So then when I got to school and I was just doing like the regular classes, I was like, I want to make a lot of money. So maybe I should be a plastic surgeon. And so I thought that there was going to be a time where I would, get my prereqs out of the way and become a plastic surgeon. And then I started looking at what plastic surgeons make. And what I kept coming to was like the best of the best in Miami or Los Angeles, where it's like, where plastic surgery is like really like a thing, or Vegas. The top guys were making like 750 grand a year. And this may seem outrageous, but I was like, I don't think that's enough for me. Like, I think I want more. And that led me to starting businesses. And so I knew that, okay, I'm not going to be a plastic surgeon. I'm not going to do anything that necessarily needs a college degree. By the way, this is true. I have the screenshot to prove it. I don't know if you saw it on Instagram. Through one of my businesses, a wholesaling company, I actually made the full salary of a plastic surgeon. It was about 740K. Technically, it was 739,800. I made it in 8 hours.
I did see that post.
Yeah, one deal in real estate. So not doing the plastic surgery route like really paid off. And I didn't need it. I have no degree of any kind. Like my highest level of completed education is a high school diploma. I have like there's nothing else that I have. And I didn't, make 700 grand by selling get rich courses. I did it by actually being a real estate investor. So it's very possible. I think if I can do it, like I'm just a guy from a small town, like anyone can do it.
Yeah. And two, like, how did that make everybody else feel? That success shut them up, that maybe were laughing at you when you dropped out.
Dude, yeah. So, when you're poor, like nobody cares about you. And when you change your life, you're like, I'm going to start hustling. People laugh at you. And then when you make it, people are mad, dude. Like people are mad at you.
Mm.
And so I have people that hate me. Like they don't even really know me, but they hate me just because I've had, a level of success that they feel that they aren't able to achieve. Um, some of the people who laughed at me when I dropped out of college, they've shut up. They've also asked me if I could give them money. So that was neat. But
Wow.
no, I mean, I'm like it would sometimes I do feel that like urge just to be like suck it, but I'm not really that guy. So I don't really do that, but there's definitely some times where it's like, oh, you talked a lot of crap. And now I'm like
Right.
rolling in it and your girl's in my DM. So what up?
Oh, wow, you're hilarious.
Oh my goodness. Hey, and Todd, I want to circle back to your point you made about the trades earlier. My full-time job's in the construction industry, and we see it on a daily basis. Contractors can't find workers. They're basically begging kids to say, "Would you like to make $30 an hour out of high school to come work for us?" And it's impossible to find people. But I've followed along kind of your journey over the past year or so, and I've seen your involvement in Bigger Pockets, and I'm an avid listener of their podcast as well. So personally, this is cool for me to have the opportunity to interview somebody that's on my favorite podcast. But I'm curious about when you first got into real estate, what did that look like, and how did that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you. Yeah, I'm a fan of Bigger Pockets as well. I was actually just at the conference in San Diego where I gave a speech, which was really fun. And yeah, being in construction, man, that's a hard job you have. And the thing is, like, you're right, kids today don't appreciate it, and it pays really, really well. So they need to come around. But so my first real estate deal, if I back up a second, when I talked about when I was 15 starting a landscaping business, my biggest client owned a bunch of real estate and I did the landscaping for all of his properties. And again, coming from a poor family, I didn't actually know that there were people out there that owned multiple homes. Like that was a foreign concept for me. So I was like, okay, this dude's doing it right. But my first ever real estate deal I bought when I was 23 years old. It was just a regular house. I guess it was big. It was 6 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms. And I bought it with my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, and we decided to live in the master bedroom and rent out all the other bedrooms. And by doing that, we were living completely for free. So we lived in a brand new construction home just outside the city of Seattle. And our mortgage payment was $0 a month, basically, because our tenants, our roommates, were paying all of it. And then we were like, okay, this is awesome. So 9 months later, we bought a second property. We rented that out by the bedroom as well. And we just sort of kept doing that. And the reason we chose by the bedroom is, again, the Seattle area is just quite expensive. So, a studio apartment in Seattle can be like 2 grand. And so there are a lot of people that don't want to pay 2 grand plus utilities for a studio. They'd rather pay a guy like me 800 or 900 bucks and have all utilities included. And we were doing houses that had anywhere between 6 and 8 bedrooms. So, some of our houses were bringing in 8,000 bucks a month, and half that was profit. Like if we had a house that was doing 8 grand a month, 4,000 per month was the cash flow after all of the mortgage, taxes, insurance, utilities, all that stuff. So it was a really good, just a really good format for us because we live in such a high priced area. But yeah, sorry, that was a long winded response to my first real estate deal. It was just a house that I lived in with roommates and my girlfriend. And now we're married and it was great. Like I think people often scoff at the idea of house hacking, whether you're going to have roommates or you live in a duplex and rent out the other half. I honestly think it's the smartest thing you can do. Like
Mhm.
I would put money on the table saying the smartest thing a person can do today is to house hack, because you're either going to pay rent to live somewhere else, or you're going to pay down your own mortgage, or you'll have other people pay off your mortgage. Mathematically
Mhm.
speaking, there's one winner in that scenario. It's having
Wow.
other people pay off your
Yeah.
mortgage.
That's
Yeah,
awesome. So, Todd, you kind of
absolutely.
answered my next question before I even asked it. I was going to ask if you could tell anyone listening, your advice as to how to get into real estate if they're looking to get into maybe their first deal. Is house hacking what you would suggest?
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. But if you're listening to this and you happen to be 50 and you have 3 kids and you don't want roommates, then perhaps it's not an option for you. And perhaps instead buying a duplex in a cheaper area makes more sense. But I would say if you don't currently own any property, buying a single family home and having roommates, if you can stomach it, if you just can't deal with roommates, I would say buy a small multifamily, a duplex, triplex, or a fourplex. You live in one unit and you rent out the remaining units to offset your mortgage. And the reason why I cap it at 4 units is because for anyone who may not know, you can buy up to 4 units that still qualify as an owner occupied primary residence, meaning you don't have to put 20% down and your interest rate will be a full percentage point lower. So, like on an investor house that's 5 units or more, your interest rate will be a full point higher, and you usually have to come up with 20 to 25% down. If you're a first time home buyer, you can get away with a 5% down payment. My first down payment was 3.5%. And I did that. I think it was $19,000. And that I ended up selling that house for about $400,000 more than what I bought it for 5 years later. So I turned $19,000 into, 400K in a couple of years, plus all the profit it was churning out for those years. So it was more like 500K.
Yeah. Oh gosh. You see, and here's the thing for I think not only for myself but for a lot of our listeners, it's like all I hear is, oh, I want to get into real estate. I want to get into real estate. I want to get into real estate. But then that wall for a lot of people is that, oh, but it's so complicated. It's so hard. There's so much paperwork, so much lingo I don't know. It seems scammy, and knowing you and knowing how transparent you are, which I love that. And you even said earlier, you're not selling quick, get rich quick schemes. And it's funny too, because I remember people were asking you and you almost didn't do it, but you ended up doing it, to make a course on it. And you're like, no, that's just not me. I don't do that. And I love that's part of your identity. But then you probably came over and were like, well, people need this. Like people really want it. Cause like I just mentioned, it is so complicated, so confusing. It's so nuanced, right? So can you talk a little bit and even promote a little bit of your course and what that means for people? And even like I would understand being the kind of person you are, like you probably make it very easy for people to understand, I would hope. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because again, for a lot of people, like even myself, it's just hard to get into because it's just so confusing.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. So I was completely against making a course of any kind. Not because I think courses are bad, but there are so many that are scams, right? Like a good course is good and probably worth money, right? But there are so many people that like I kid you not, there are men out here that will go rent a Lamborghini for a day and hire an Instagram model to put on a bikini and be like, "Hey, this is my car that I own. This is my chick that I'm banging. You want to learn how to do it? Pay me $10,000." And people are falling for it, right?
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to get lumped in with that. But
Yeah.
after, gosh, maybe 2 years of consulting calls from the CNBC thing, I was like, I've got to find a more efficient way. Because when my CNBC article came out, my inbox was flooded with people saying, how do I do it? And I was responding to each and every one of them as much as I could and doing phone calls. And I wasn't charging for it because I didn't believe that I wanted to put off that fake guru, like, yeah, pay me a
I
couple
respect
$100
that.
for a call, right? But
Right.
what happened was I was literally on the phone all day, like 12 hours a day straight. I was just doing these phone calls. I wasn't actually getting any business done. So then I started charging for calls and I kept increasing the price, not because I wanted their money, but because I wanted my time back. So it got to the
100%.
point where I was charging about $150 for a 10-minute phone call. And I was still busy like 6 hours a day doing these phone calls that I didn't want to do. And so I took a poll on Instagram, I took a poll on YouTube, and I was like, do you guys just like want like a class? And they were like,
Right.
yeah, I think 96% of people, or maybe it was 94% of people said yes. So I
Mhm.
made a step-by-step real estate class that basically takes everything I've learned over the last 7 years and it's designed to teach it all to everyone in 7 days. So you basically skip all those years of headache and all that stuff that I did. And then I also have a Facebook group that goes along with it. So I'm very involved in the Facebook group. People can ask questions. We can do best practices. But yeah, it's video modules and then PDF downloads of like my specific lease that I created and the house rules that I have and all that stuff. So, but I still felt so that like it wasn't me to make a course. So when it first came out, I don't know if you guys know who CoffeeZilla is or Spencer Cornelia, but they talk a lot about fake gurus who are basically doing these scams. So I had a promo code that was the promo code was literally not a fake guru, and it was for 90% off. So it was a $500 course, and I was giving it away for $50 for like the first 2 months. I don't think that coupon code is still active, but it's pretty easy to find. Like but I will say this too. for everyone listening, you do not need to buy my course to be successful in real estate. Like, I did not buy any course, and I've made millions and millions of dollars in real estate, and I continue to do that. So you don't need to buy my course. You don't need to buy any course of any kind. There's so much information out there for free, whether it's YouTube or books or whatever. I think what the benefit of a class like mine does is, if you don't want to do all the research, or if you get sort of anxiety from just all the stuff there is, it just breaks it down so it's kind of idiot proof and a step-by-step formula that anyone can follow. But again, you don't need to buy it to be successful. You can be wildly successful without ever buying anyone's real estate class. I promise you that.
Yeah. No, that's huge. And, again, for all of our listeners, please go support Todd. I know he's saying you don't have to, but I just can already tell, like, you are a no BS guy. You've done this for years. Clearly, you're super successful. And I think I remember you saying, yes, you want to get your time back, but you didn't need to do this. You don't need the money. I think you said you literally said you want the time back. It's literally, you're doing this so you can get your time back. Todd doesn't need your guys' money if you guys so choose or not so choose to do it. But he did that so you don't have to call him, and he can get that in the most clear and concise way possible. So thank you for expanding upon that. One thing that, again, popped in my mind, re-popped in my mind after you were talking about that, because you mentioned going through house hacking, and you said that you were doing this with your girlfriend at the time, who's now your wife, which is amazing. Congratulations on your family too. That's such a beautiful thing. I love fatherhood. It's under talked about. It's crazy, but. So you did house hacking with your girlfriend at the time. You probably talked about this multiple times, but myself with my partner, I've been considering this as well. How did your girlfriend at the time take that? How did you guys go about that? What was the conversation like? Was there tension? Obviously, you guys went through with it, but what was that like for people who maybe want to house hack, but like, I love the privacy that my girlfriend and I can have, but then I want to house hack because this is a great opportunity for me. Like, how did that go for you?
I think the biggest benefit, I'll put it this way. The first time my girlfriend and I lived together was in that house with roommates. So we didn't have an established routine that was just the two of us. We lived in separate places. So I think it would have been infinitely harder had we had a house that was our home, right? That it was like our space of like love and commitment and privacy. And then we welcomed strangers from Craigslist into our home. But it wasn't like that. We bought this house together specifically to live in it for free. So I think that was the thing. We had no established routine before. We dated all through college, but we never lived together. And then when we finally did buy a house together, like, that was our first time living together, was buying this house and having roommates. So
that's solid.
That might have been like a loophole, if you will. If that's not your situation, if you live with your partner currently and you want to get them on board, I would just tie it back to whatever goals you guys have in life. I will say this, full transparency. My wife and I right now are building our dream home, and it is quite literally a mansion on the water. It's going to have an infinity pool, a basketball court, a cigar lounge, an arcade room, like all whatever ridiculous thing you can think of, helipad, right? The only reason that we are able to do that is because we had roommates for like 5 years, right? And during that time, I developed my real estate company. Now, we did it young though. Like, we started when we were 23. So by the time we were 28, we were out of it and we could retire from our day jobs, right? So starting young is helpful, but if you're older and you're watching this, it's never too late. But if you have goals in life, like maybe you want to travel the world, or you want to free up money to start a tech company or whatever it is, if you're living for free, it's just a great way to do that, because whatever you're spending in rent, you just have that recurring coming back to you every month that you can invest, and some more on the top. It's not just living for free, it's the cash flow on the top. So on our best one, we no longer live with roommates. We haven't for a while now. But on our best one, we were living with roommates. We were living completely for free, and we were getting paid like $1,800 a month to live in our free house, right? So that was awesome. And then I want to go back to something you said before, where it's and this is backtracking a little bit, but you talked about how I wanted my time back, which is why I switched from the calls to the course, which is completely true. And again, this is just another transparent thing. Yesterday, so I have a buyer list for real estate that I've developed over the last 7 years of buyers, sellers, flippers, all that stuff. I spent 38 minutes calling through that list, and I put a deal together that will pay me $70,000. And the check is coming I don't want to date this, but it's coming like 3 days from now. From the time we're recording this podcast, 3 days from now, and I did the work yesterday. So that's what, like, if someone asks, like, oh, why don't you do consulting calls, or why don't you go to coffee with me and talk real estate? It's not that I don't necessarily want to. It's that it's the opportunity cost of my time, because 38 minutes on the phone literally generated, I'm going to make 70 grand in, like, what is today? Tuesday? I'm going to make it on Thursday. Yeah, I'm getting the check on Thursday, 70 grand, right? So it's just, it's amazing what you can do when you increase your high income skills and you have a scalable business and you just do all these things. You value your time so much, because your time can produce such crazy income for you. And then if it's not, you just want to take the time and spend it with your family, right? Like, if I'm
100%.
not going to be making crazy amounts of money, I might as well go hang out with my wife and my son instead of doing these consulting calls for $100. So that's
100%.
sort of why I transitioned to the course that I made, and I can still answer questions, but it's already done.
Right. Beautiful. Thank you.
Absolutely. And that focus of it really comes down like the time value of money. And you look at, okay, if I take an hour, whatever you think that your personal hourly rate is, if you can make 70 grand in 38 minutes, you're probably looking at 100 grand an hour. So
no big deal.
you doing some task that takes you 30 minutes, you doing the task yourself may save you $100, but in reality, you're losing out on potentially 50 grand an hour. And that's kind of a mindset shift that I've had over the last year too, just looking in like jobs like mowing the lawn or landscaping and stuff like that I used to do like when I was a kid all the time. And now I've hired those out for my rental properties because I realize I'm losing money by doing those jobs when I think I'm saving money. But I also want to like focus on another thing that you said too when you were talking about the house hacking thing. And it ultimately comes down to, like you said, what your goals are in life. And if you're the type of person that wants to retire early and retire as quick as possible, then yeah, house hacking is phenomenal. But if you're the type of person that love your job, you're comfortable in working it for, 30 years, then maybe you don't need to house hack and maybe you can do real estate other ways. So I've house hacked with my first property and I didn't know it was house hacking, but I guess it's important to realize too for our listeners that you don't have to do it this exact way. Like Yinka said at the beginning, Todd, like you said too, everybody's story is different and it's not a one size fits all. So thank you for going through that as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. This whole financial independence game, it's certainly not one size fits all, because everybody's different. We all have different goals. What's the same for everyone is math. And so you can look at like, oh, yeah, I can live for $0 a month by house hacking, but maybe it doesn't fit your temperament. Like if you hate having people in your kitchen and you're a hothead and you're going to freak out, then don't do it, right? I personally know a guy who doesn't own any rental properties, doesn't own a single stock. What he does own are a bunch of car washes. He owns them all up and down the West Coast. He makes $18 million a year, right? He'll never house hack. He'll never trade stock, but he's doing quite well for himself because he found what works for him. And so figure out what works for you and then just do that over and over again. It's really like once you find out that thing, for me, I actually do like real estate. I like stocks, I like starting businesses. It's very fun for me to do that. And it was fun for me to learn about it. But yeah, for those of you who just like, if it's just too crazy or too much going on, just find out what works for you. And that might be completely different than what works for me.
Right. Yeah. And see, the theme of this, it's very interesting, right? It kind of goes back to the time aspect of it. And that's why I love how transparent you are with this. Being the kind of man that you are, and people are trying to take your time. Clearly, your time is worth, someone's salary. That's crazy to think about, but it's amazing, right? How does a busy man like you, now even with a family, how do you structure? How do you manage your time? Do you have an assistant? Are you like holistically all over a calendar, which probably both of those things are true, or what have you? How do you structure your calendar, your day, your time, as well as hopefully in the future when you get to your goals, whatever that is monetarily, what are your plans to do with your time? What are you wanting to do with your time? So I know those are two questions, but I'm very curious on more asking on the time aspect of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I structure my day based on time blocking. So I live in my calendar basically. And so anything that I want to accomplish, I put it in the calendar. And I usually do revenue generating activities first thing in the day. After I would like to go back to the gym more, but having my son just makes it difficult because he's got a bunch of needs and he's screaming in the morning when I would normally go. But if I can get back into it, going to the gym first would be, the way I start my day. And then
gotta get a gym in your new house.
Oh, that's, dude, already know. Yeah, you already know.
Love it.
It's the next thing I do is in my calendar, whatever I'm going to do that day to produce income, if I choose to, because I have passive income too. I don't need to work. But if I'm going to make cold calls, or if I'm going to, do whatever, record a YouTube video, or, go on a podcast like this, I try to do it early and then get it done. And then the rest of the day, I'm free to do whatever I choose. Now that, we have a son, we want more kids. So spending time with friends and family is going to be a big deal to us. Traveling is another one. We love to travel. I think the idea for me is it's just being able to wake up every day and doing whatever the hell I want. So sometimes I want to work. Like the other day when I made calls and I was able to generate 70 grand in profit, right? That was awesome. Like that was a great day for me. And then other days I just want to go wakeboarding or whatever. So it's just about living my life on my own terms and doing whatever I want. And when you have financial freedom, you can do that. So to answer your question of how I will spend my time, I guess it'll vary day to day. But when you don't have to go to the office and, you don't have to rely on somebody else's paycheck because you can generate your own money, or even better yet, you have passive income paying you every month, that just gives you freedom. And then you can do whatever you want.
No, that's beautiful. And see, there's so many layers to this, and I absolutely love it. And the one question, as we wrap up, one of the questions I want to ask too, because we talked about, your time management system and your time blocking technique. A lot of people will look up on YouTube, millionaire life hacks or millionaire habits or whatever. There's books all over for it, right? So obviously talking to one, right? Having access and talking to them. What are some legitimate habits or techniques or things that you do as a millionaire, right, that really engage or really activate your life and take it to the next level to continue to make your millions, to continue to be successful? Like, what are the things that Todd Baldwin does on a day-to-day level, whether it's, systems and processes in place to kind of be at the most effective at all times?
Absolutely. Yeah. Great question. It's a tough one to answer, but things that I do every day, no matter what, is I always have productivity time where I'm doing something for the business, because I would go crazy if I don't. But then I also have I schedule in sort of creative time where I'm just sort of by myself, whether I'm writing something down or thinking through something. I kind of joke around that the shower is my idea chamber. So I take long showers and I just think through things.
Hit with ideas. Yeah,
exactly. As far, like some people are like, you got to wake up at 4 a.m. and take an ice cold shower and then hopscotch and whatever it is.
Right.
I think it's just sort of like we talked about earlier. It's different for everyone. Some people got to get their caffeine in the morning. I just never drank coffee at all. So I think it sort of depends. But I will say being intentional about your time, because time is all we have, right? So you can always make more money. You can never make more time. So if you waste 4 hours, consuming garbage on Instagram, you'll never get those 4 hours back. One thing I also never do, because it's not productive and it just gets you in the wrong mindset, is I never complain about why life may not be fair. I spend zero time complaining online or wishing things were different, because I will just go out and make it so, right? Like if I'm mistreated by someone, or if I think I'm held back for this or that reason, instead of complaining about it, I will just go change my situation. And so I don't want to disempower myself by saying I'm a victim, so I can't achieve X, Y, Z. I'm saying, no, I can do whatever the heck I want, and here's how I'm going to do it. And it might be harder for me than it is for other people because of whatever reason, but I'm not going to complain about it. I'm not going to sulk. I'm just going to go get what I want.
That's real.
Absolutely. And Todd, I have one question that I want to ask you before we wrap up here.
Yes.
So This is something that has been on my mind listening to the Bigger Pockets podcast and hearing different investors who use different strategies. But what would you say to the housing as a human right crowd and those that believe investing in real estate is not the right thing to do and that are terrible people?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. So let's start with housing as a human right. Um, Maybe it is. Maybe housing is a human right, and maybe food is a human right. The problem is somebody has to grow the food, and somebody has to build the house. And you can't require someone to grow your food for free. That's called slavery. You can't require someone to build your home for free. So if we understand that it takes time, labor, money, resources to build a house, then that person needs to be compensated in a way that the market sees fit, not the way that you or I see fit, or some person usually with blue hair who thinks it should be free should see fit. Right?
Yeah.
It's, well, what does the market say that this is worth? Because if you spend money and time and energy building a house, why should I get your house for free?
Yeah.
And maybe it is human right, but I wouldn't be entitled to something that you put together. So I think that thing. So first of all, I won't necessarily even disagree that housing is a human right. I don't know that it's not, but I know that we live in a market economy, and people are going to be, they're going to go produce things if there's an economic reason to do so. And if I was actually talking to, I was talking to someone who self-identifies as a socialist and a trained Marxist. And I'll just give a brief highlight of that conversation. And she actually threatened to sue me if I put it on YouTube, so I didn't do it. But she was basically saying that there should be no jobs, that the government should give everybody money, and there should be no jobs, and nobody should have to work. And so I asked her, if there are no jobs, where will food come from? And she said, the grocery store. And I asked, where will the grocery store get it? And she was like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, well, food doesn't magically appear at the shelf. Somebody has to grow the wheat and turn the wheat into bread and load the bread onto trucks and drive it to the store. And at every arena, there is a job. So if there's no jobs, there's no farmers. And if there's no farmers, no food is grown. And by the way, that's exactly what happened in communist Russia after World War I, where the communists basically didn't like that some farmers were getting rich, so they banished all of them. There was nobody left to grow any food, and 6 million people starved to death, right? So by the end of this conversation, she knew she had lost. And so she threatened to sue me if I put it up on YouTube. But it's this idea that, like, there is no such thing as just free for everyone. Everyone gets it because somebody's labor is doing it. Somebody's going to go out there and do it. And so I think that despite all of the flaws that capitalism has, I think it's the best system we've come up with because it allows all of us to say, these are the skills and abilities that I have. Let me go test them in the marketplace and see what people will give me for them. If I can go build you a house, will you give me X? Or if I can go grow you food or paint this painting or sing this song, I will trade all of that for dollars. And so I think it's, despite that it's flawed, I don't know any other system that would be better because then you have corruption.
That's one of the best answers I think I've ever received to that question. So very good job. Thank you.
All right. Sweet.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's really no such thing as a free lunch. It's like, that's a whole nother thing. There's so many levels to. Oh my goodness. But yeah, God, I love this. One of the last questions before we get into that quick speed round of the 3 questions, super easy too, is again, for our listeners out there who are again relatively young, what is just one, maybe a couple things that you would really recommend them to do to really start young?
I would say learn how money works. You won't be taught it in school, by the way. School is designed to make sure you actually don't know how money works. School wants you to get good grades and go to college and then get a job and work for 40 years. Understand how money works. Understand that if you make, let's say you go to school and you become that doctor and you make $500,000 a year, you're going to be taxed at 40%. A guy like me, I can make $500,000 a year. and I'm taxed at 20%. Why is that? Well, it's because my money is capital gains and your money is wages, and wages are taxed more. And it might suck and be terrible, but that's the way of the world. So learn it. Like, I feel like life is sort of like a chess game. And so you have to understand the rules of chess. If you don't understand the rules, you're never going to win the game. And so understand what you can do and different things within chess. I'm a chess nerd. So
That's awesome.
Different pieces do different things, right? So, I also passive income through real estate, because you have a depreciation schedule, it's virtually tax-free. So there was a time, maybe 2 years ago, where I had scaled my real estate business to $40,000 a month, and I was paying $0 in taxes legally. And there are people who make $50K a year who are paying, 20 grand a year in taxes. So understand how money works, do it young, learn about passive income, learn about investing, learn that you are not paid based on your hard work. You're paid based on the value you bring to the marketplace. And that's why someone like Beyonce can make $40 million a year to sing songs and shake her butt, right? Because she's damn good at it, and people want to pay and buy tickets to see that, where I will never make money to sing songs and shake my butt. So I had to figure out, well, what can I make lots of money at? And for me, it was real estate. It was starting businesses, right? So understand what are you good at? How can you monetize it? How does money work? Scale it, and then just don't complain about life being unfair. It does you no good. And it puts you in this victim mentality. And once you're in that victim mentality, you're very easy to control.
A whole nother thing. There's so many layers too. I love that. I love that. Hopefully for our listeners who just listen to that, run that back, take notes, run it back and take notes again. Oh my goodness, that's deep. Thank you. I love that. So for the next 3 questions, super quick. As 2022 comes to a close, what is what is Todd Baldwin's top goal to either execute and finish by 2023 or before 2023, or maybe a new goal you're ready to, go on the journey for 2023? What is that one goal you're really trying to execute on?
Okay, I have it right here, and
Okay.
I can't say too much about it because I have an NDA, but it's signing a contract for a television show.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Whenever it comes out, looking forward to seeing it.
Right.
I love that's sick. Wow. Okay. Yeah, that was a quick answer. I loved it too. So then now, even for the next question, right? I can assume you're an avid book reader, right? Probably deep into maybe more of the self-help books, if not. I can see you as a nonfiction, I think, or fiction, I should say. But what is one self-help nonfiction book you'd really recommend to our listeners?
Gosh, that's a good one. How to Win Friends. How to Win Friends and Influence People is
Carnegie.
great.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then also, if I can give another one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Those 2 books, I read them when I was a teenager, and they're phenomenal.
Yep. See, books for a lot of people are very boring. Why? Because school, again, so many layers of that, but there's so many disincentives for, why people aren't reading books nowadays. But then you find books that you like to read, it'll change your whole way you think. Yep. And I saw Sean going crazy for the Rich Dad Poor Dad. That is like the number one starting financial literacy book. That's beautiful. And then the last question, just to really finally wrap it up, is where can our listeners find you? Whether it's maybe your business, your website, your LinkedIn. That's how I found you, back in the day. Your Instagram. Where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys want to find and connect, the best way is through Instagram. It is just at Todd J. Baldwin. And then I do have a small YouTube channel, just my name, Todd Baldwin. But if you think you want to send a message and me respond, Instagram by far the best way. On Facebook, I don't even see them anymore because I have 6,000 unread messages on Facebook. But I see them still because they're not up to 6,000 yet. So
Gotcha.
Instagram is definitely the best way. And one thing, if I can just add, you were talking
Yeah,
about the schools and books, and I think the difference is school teaches you what to think, where what we do here as entrepreneurs, we try to learn how to think. And so reading these books that will change your mindset, that is teaching you how to think. It's not necessarily teaching you what to think. And so that's why it's so powerful, because it opens your brain up to, I never would have guessed that I could take 38 minutes of my time and make $70,000, right? School doesn't teach you that. They probably say it's impossible, right? So it's changing your mindset and learning there's so much out there that you guys can do, and you just got to go do it.
Hmm. Yeah, and that last statement right there, I'll make a quick joke. Like, now we're in debt to you $100,000. We just spent a whole hour with you. So again, we thank you for all the gems you just dropped, not only on us but for our listeners. So Todd, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We know you're a busy man, obviously time valued man. So we appreciate you. We thank you so much. Looking forward to even connect on a deeper level, hopefully outside this podcast. But yeah, no. So again, for everybody listening, this is On the Fly podcast. I was the host, Olayinka Famadou. You can find me on LinkedIn at Olayinka Famadou. I have a little dot under, so maybe look up Famadou. Sean, where can they find you?
Find me on all social medias at Sean Lacey7, on LinkedIn at Sean Lacey, and make sure to check out thefli.net to view this podcast episode, read our blog posts, and check out all the free tools and all the great content we have. And also, Todd, thank you so much. We appreciate your time. This has been excellent. It's been an honor to share the screen with you and get to meet you virtually. I hope I'd get to meet you in person. Maybe BPCon next year. We'll see. But thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you,
Awesome.
guys.
Zach, where can they find you, Zach?
Yep. You guys can find me, same as Yenka and Sean, on all platforms at ZON22. Todd, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. It was great coming on. I promise next time I come on your podcast, I won't have internet problems and I won't do it on a lopsided phone.
Hey, again, just the fact that you're here, we deeply appreciate it. So again, everyone, if you listen this far, we thank you, we appreciate you, and this was On the Fly podcast.